Have you ever been pulled over by police and accused of kidnapping your own children by your mother-in-law? I will never forget the moment I saw the red and blue lights flashing in my rearview mirror, 200 miles from home with my 5-year-old twin daughters singing Disney songs in the back seat. I had no idea that pulling over on that sunny Tuesday afternoon would lead to the most terrifying 30 minutes of my life, watching police officers separate me from my crying children while they verified that I was actually their mother. I definitely did not expect to discover that my own mother-in-law had reported me for kidnapping. My name is Hazel Carter. I am 33 years old, and I have been married to my husband Ethan for 7 years. We have twin daughters, Violet and Luna, who just turned 5 last month. I work remotely as a software developer, which allows me to be the primary caregiver for our girls while still maintaining my career. Ethan works as an operations manager at a manufacturing plant about 40 minutes from our home, so his schedule is less flexible than mine. We have what I always thought was a pretty normal life, suburban house with a backyard, family movie nights on Fridays, the whole package. The one complication in our otherwise peaceful existence was Ethan's mother, Patricia Carter. Patricia is 62 years old and retired 3 years ago after spending 30 years as a school principal. I think the job shaped her personality in ways that made retirement difficult for her. She was used to being in charge, making decisions, having authority over hundreds of children and dozens of staff members. When she no longer had that outlet for her controlling tendencies, she turned her focus entirely onto our family, specifically onto my daughters and my parenting. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs were there from the beginning, but they escalated so gradually that I kept telling myself I was overreacting. When the twins were born, Patricia insisted on staying at our house for 2 weeks to help. That help mostly consisted of her criticizing how I held the babies, telling me I was feeding them wrong, and rearranging my kitchen cabinets without asking. Ethan kept saying she meant well, that she just wanted to be involved, that I should give her grace because she was excited to be a grandmother. Then came the video calls. Patricia wanted to FaceTime with the girls every single day, sometimes twice a day. If I did not answer, she would call Ethan at work in a panic, convinced something terrible had happened. Never mind that the girls might be napping, or that I might be in the middle of a work meeting, or that we might just be at the playground without phone service. Her need to see them daily was non-negotiable in her mind. The nickname situation bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Most kids call their grandmothers grandma or nana or something similar. Patricia insisted that Violet and Luna call her Mama Pat. Not Grandma Pat, just Mama Pat. When I gently suggested that might be confusing since I was their mama, she laughed and said the girls were smart enough to know the difference. But I noticed she would correct them if they said Grandma, redirecting them back to Mama Pat every single time. About 2 years ago, Patricia asked if she could have a spare key to our house in case of emergencies. Against my better judgment, I agreed, mostly because Ethan thought it was reasonable. That key was supposed to be for emergencies only. Instead, Patricia started showing up unannounced, letting herself in whenever she felt like it. I would be working in my home office and suddenly hear the front door open, Patricia calling out that she just wanted to see the girls for a minute. Sometimes she would come by when we were not even home, and I would find evidence she had been there, dishes rearranged in the cabinet, toys reorganized, a note left on the counter about how the girls needed new winter coats or their bookshelf looked messy. I asked Ethan to get the key back from his mother at least 6 times over the course of a year. Each time he promised he would talk to her, but somehow it never happened. He would say he brought it up and she got upset, or that she promised to only use it for emergencies, or that I was making a bigger deal out of it than necessary. The phrase I heard most often was that I needed to be more understanding of her because being a grandmother was so important to her identity. The comments about my working from home started subtly. Patricia would mention articles she read about how children need constant supervision. She would say things like, "Oh, I know you are busy with your computer work," when I asked if she had talked to the girls about something. She told Ethan, within my hearing, that she worried the girls spent too much time entertaining themselves while I was in meetings. The implication was always the same. I was not providing proper supervision. I was not attentive enough. I was putting my career ahead of my children. This frustrated me beyond measure because working from home actually allowed me to be more present for my daughters than most working parents. I took breaks to have lunch with them. I was there when they got home from preschool. I never missed a doctor's appointment or school event. But in Patricia's mind, if I was working at all, I was neglecting them. She seemed to believe that mothers should provide every moment of their attention to their children, despite the fact that she herself had worked full-time when Ethan was growing up. 6 months ago, things took a darker turn. Patricia started talking about grandparents' rights, casually at first, mentioning news stories about grandparents who sued for visitation. Then she brought it up at a family dinner, saying she had been researching and knew that grandparents had legal rights to see their grandchildren even if parents tried to keep them away. Ethan laughed it off as his mom being dramatic, but I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Why would she be researching grandparents' rights unless she was planning to use them? I started documenting things after that conversation, nothing formal, just notes on my phone about when Patricia showed up unannounced, things she said that concerned me, times she undermined my parenting in front of the girls. I also started paying more attention to our smart home system. We had cameras at the front and back doors, a smart lock, and a system that logged whenever doors were opened. I had never really looked at the logs before, but once I started checking, I was shocked by what I found. Patricia had been entering our house an average of 3 times per week when we were not home. 3 times per week. She had a regular pattern, Tuesday and Thursday mornings when the girls were at preschool, and Sunday afternoons when we usually went to the park. I had no idea what she was doing during these visits, but the log showed she was sometimes staying for over an hour. When I showed Ethan the data, he was finally starting to see that his mother's behavior had crossed the line, but he still hesitated to confront her. He worried about damaging their relationship, about how hurt she would be, about causing family drama. Last month I made the decision that changed everything. My best friend from college was getting married in a beach town about 4 hours away, and she had invited me to come down a few days early with the girls. Her sister had daughters close to Violet and Luna's age, and she thought it would be fun for the kids to play together before the wedding festivities started. I was excited about the trip, the girls were excited, and Ethan supported the plan even though he could not get time off work to come with us. I did not tell Patricia we were going. I know how that sounds, but I was tired of running every decision past her, tired of her inserting herself into every aspect of our lives. This was a trip with my friend, it had nothing to do with her, and I saw no reason why she needed to know our whereabouts every moment of every day. Ethan knew where we would be gone for 5 days, and that was that. We left on a Monday morning, the girls buckled into their car seats with their matching unicorn backpacks and a tablet loaded with movies. I had my iced coffee, a road trip playlist ready, and I felt lighter than I had in months. No Patricia dropping by unexpectedly, no judgment about my parenting choices, just me and my daughters having an adventure. The first 3 days were perfect. We stayed in a little beach house, built sandcastles, collected shells, ate ice cream for breakfast because we were on vacation and I could make that call. The girls played with my friend's nieces, we had a bonfire on the beach, and I actually relaxed for the first time in recent memory. I posted a few photos on my private Instagram account, beach sunset shots and pictures of the girls with their new friends, nothing that indicated our specific location or plans. On Tuesday afternoon, we were driving back from getting lunch when I noticed a police car behind me. I was not speeding, my registration was current, my lights all worked. I could not figure out why they would pull me over. When the lights came on, my first thought was that maybe they were going around me to respond to an emergency. But no, they were signaling for me to pull over. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot, my heart pounding even though I knew I had not done anything wrong. There is something about seeing police lights that triggers an automatic anxiety response, even when you are innocent. In my back seat, Violet asked why we were stopping, and Luna wanted to know if we were in trouble. 2 officers approached my car, 1 on each side. The one who came to my window asked for my license and registration, which I provided with shaking hands. Then he asked me to step out of the vehicle. That was when my confusion turned to real fear. He asked my name, asked who the children in the back seat were, asked where we were going. I answered every question, increasingly bewildered about what was happening. Then he said the words that made my blood run cold, "We received a report that you may have taken these children without permission." I actually laughed, a short, shocked bark of laughter that I could not control. Without permission, I said, "I am their mother. These are my daughters." The officer's expression did not change. He asked if I could prove that. Could I prove I was the mother of my own children? I fumbled for my phone, pulled up photos of me pregnant with the twins, pictures from the hospital when they were born, thousands of photos spanning their entire 5 years of life. I showed him their birth certificates that I thankfully had photos of in my cloud storage, showed him their insurance cards that listed me as their mother, pulled up our pediatrician's contact information. My voice was getting higher and tighter with each piece of evidence I provided, and I could hear myself starting to panic. Behind me, Violet and Luna were crying now, asking why the police were talking to Mommy, asking if they could get out of their car seats, scared and confused by the sudden tension. I wanted to comfort them, but the officer told me to stay where I was. The second officer was on his radio. I heard him giving someone my license number, the girls' names, requesting verification of some kind. The wait felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. 15 minutes of standing in a parking lot while strangers stared, my daughter sobbed in the car, and I tried to process what was happening. Finally, the first officer's demeanor shifted slightly. He told me that they had received a call from a Patricia Carter claiming that her daughter-in-law had kidnapped her grandchildren. She had provided my name, description, and license plate number. She told the dispatcher that she had gone to our house to check on the girls and found them missing, that she believed I had taken them without their father's permission, and that she feared for their safety given my history of what she called unstable behavior. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Patricia had called the police and reported me for kidnapping my own children. The officer asked if I could provide a contact number for the children's father. With trembling fingers, I called Ethan. He was in a meeting but answered when he saw it was me, probably worried something was wrong. Something was definitely wrong. I tried to explain the situation calmly, but my voice broke halfway through. The officer took the phone from me and spoke with Ethan directly, verifying his identity, confirming that he knew his wife and daughters were on this trip, confirming that he had given permission, confirming that I was absolutely allowed to travel with our children. After that call, the officers apologized, said they had to follow up on reports involving children, and told me I was free to go. One of them mentioned that I might want to contact a lawyer about filing a false police report complaint against my mother-in-law. Then they left, and I stood there in the parking lot trying to calm my sobbing daughters and control my own shaking hands. That incident alone would have been traumatic enough, but Patricia's phone call had triggered an Amber Alert. An actual Amber Alert with my photo, my license plate, and a description of my vehicle had been issued before the officers had verified the situation. By the time they canceled it, the alert had already circulated on social media, shared thousands of times by well-meaning people who thought they were helping to locate kidnapped children. My phone started buzzing nonstop with messages from concerned friends and acquaintances who had seen the alert. Some were worried, asking if I was okay and if the girls were safe. Others were suspicious, wanting to know what really happened, clearly wondering if there was more to the story. Several of my clients, who followed me on social media for professional networking purposes, saw the alert. By Wednesday morning, 2 of them had sent carefully worded emails asking if I was available to discuss their projects, obvious professional distance being established just in case. I drove back to the beach house in a daze, called my friend and told her what happened, and spent the rest of the day holding my daughters while they asked questions I did not know how to answer. Why did Mama Pat call the police on us? Violet wanted to know. Did we do something bad? Luna asked. I tried to explain it as a misunderstanding, that Mama Pat was worried because she did not know where we were, but 5-year-olds are perceptive. They could tell something was very wrong. Ethan called me every hour for the rest of that day, apologizing, saying he had called his mother and told her what she did was unacceptable, promising we would figure this out. I asked him what Patricia said when he confronted her. He hesitated before admitting that she had not really apologized. She maintained that she was just worried about her grandbabies and did not know where they were. She told Ethan that I should have informed her of our travel plans, that anything could have happened to us, and that she had a right to know where her grandchildren were at all times. I cut the trip short. We packed up on Wednesday and drove home. I could not enjoy the vacation anymore, could not pretend everything was fine. The girls were subdued during the drive, none of the cheerful singing from the trip down. When we pulled into our driveway Wednesday evening, I saw Patricia's car parked on the street in front of our house. She got out as soon as she saw us, walking quickly toward our car with her arms outstretched like she was going to gather the girls into a hug. I told the girls to stay in the car, got out, and stood between Patricia and the vehicle. The look on my face must have communicated something because she actually stopped walking. I kept my voice low and steady, very aware that my daughters could hear through the open car windows. I told Patricia that what she did was unforgivable, that she had terrified me and traumatized her granddaughters, that she had potentially damaged my professional reputation, and that she was not welcome around my children until further notice. She tried to interrupt multiple times, but I kept talking over her. I told her she needed to leave our property immediately or I would call the police myself. Patricia's expression went from concerned grandmother to something much colder. She said I could not keep her from her grandchildren, that she had rights, that any judge would see I was an unfit mother who left her children alone all day while I worked. She said she had been documenting my neglect for months and had already contacted a lawyer about seeking emergency custody. Then she got in her car and drove away. Ethan came home an hour later. We had the most serious conversation of our marriage. I told him that his mother had crossed every possible line and that I needed him to choose. Either he was going to set firm boundaries with Patricia and support me completely, or I was going to take the girls and stay with my parents while I consulted a divorce lawyer. That sounds dramatic, but I meant every word. I could not live like this anymore, could not raise my daughters in an environment where their grandmother could terrorize us with impunity while their father made excuses. To his credit, Ethan did not try to defend his mother this time. I think the reality of what she had done finally broke through his lifelong habit of minimizing her behavior. He held me while I cried, apologized for not protecting our family sooner, and promised we would handle this together. The next morning, we met with a family lawyer. The lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s named Gabriella Foster, listened to our story and immediately recommended several steps. First, we needed to formally demand that Patricia return our house key, and if she refused, we needed to change our locks. Second, we should file for a restraining order based on the false police report and her pattern of harassment. Third, we needed to document everything, print out those smart home logs showing her unauthorized entries, save all text messages and voicemails, create a timeline of her escalating behavior. Patricia did refuse to return the key, claiming she had lost it, so we changed all our locks that weekend. We also installed additional security cameras and upgraded our system to send immediate alerts anytime someone approached our doors. For days after we returned from our trip, we were served with legal papers. Patricia had filed for emergency grandparents' visitation rights, claiming that we were alienating her from the children and that the girls' well-being was at risk due to my inadequate supervision. The filing included a statement from Patricia describing herself as a concerned grandmother who had been forced to take legal action after her daughter-in-law kidnapped the children and fled the state. Reading those papers made me physically ill. She was trying to paint herself as a victim and me as a dangerous, unstable mother. Our lawyer assured us that Patricia's case was weak, especially given the false police report, but the process would still require court appearances, investigations, and significant legal fees. The court appointed a guardian ad litem, a lawyer whose job is to investigate and represent the best interests of the children in custody disputes. Her name was Naomi Wright, and she came to our home to interview us, observe our family dynamic, and review our documentation. We showed her everything: the smart home logs, the timeline of Patricia's behavior, text messages where Patricia criticized my parenting, records of her unannounced visits. Naomi also interviewed the girls, separately from us, asking them about their home life, their routines, how they felt about their grandmother. Then she went to interview Patricia. That interview, it turned out, was when everything started to unravel for my mother-in-law. 2 weeks later, Naomi called us for a follow-up meeting. What she told us left us absolutely stunned. During her investigation, she had requested records from any professionals who had worked with the children. That was standard procedure, checking with doctors, therapists, teachers. Naomi discovered that Patricia had been taking Violet and Luna to a child psychologist during the time she babysat them. I interrupted immediately, saying we had never taken our daughters to a psychologist and had never authorized anyone else to do so. Naomi nodded grimly and said that was what she suspected. Patricia had apparently been taking them to therapy sessions twice a month for the past 4 months, telling the psychologist that she was their legal guardian and that the girls' parents had asked her to handle their mental health care. The psychologist, who should have verified this information but failed to do so, had been seeing the girls and documenting sessions focused on their relationship with their mother. Naomi had obtained the therapy notes after Patricia tried to submit them as evidence of my inadequate parenting. The notes revealed that Patricia had been coaching the girls to say negative things about me. The psychologist had documented statements from the twins about how Mommy was always working, how they felt lonely, how Mama Pat was the one who really took care of them. But the psychologist had also noted, in several sessions, that the girls seemed to be repeating phrases that sounded rehearsed, and that they would often contradict their negative statements minutes later with positive stories about me. The therapy notes also included observations that Patricia was unusually involved in the sessions, often trying to speak for the girls or redirect their answers. In one note, the psychologist had written that she was concerned about possible parental alienation syndrome but had assumed the alienating parent was me, not the grandmother. The psychologist was horrified when she realized she had been manipulated and immediately submitted a corrected report to the guardian. But that was not the worst of it. Naomi had also done a standard background check and financial investigation, looking for any factors that might impact the case. She discovered that Patricia had recently increased the life insurance policy she held. The beneficiaries were Violet and Luna, and the policy amount had been raised from $50,000 to $500,000. The increase had been made 2 months ago, right around the time Patricia started researching grandparents' rights and taking the girls to unauthorized therapy sessions. Naomi was very careful in how she presented this information, noting that there could be innocent explanations for increasing an insurance policy in favor of grandchildren. But combined with everything else, the secret therapy sessions, the coaching, the false police report, the unauthorized entry into our home, it created a deeply disturbing pattern. At minimum, it suggested Patricia was planning some kind of long-term play for custody. At worst, well, Naomi did not say it out loud, but the implication hung in the air. Ethan looked like he was going to be sick. This was his mother, the woman who raised him, and he was confronting the possibility that she was not just overbearing but potentially dangerous to our family. I felt vindicated but also terrified. All those times I told myself I was overreacting, turns out I was underreacting. Our lawyer filed amended motions based on this new information, requesting that Patricia's petition for visitation be denied and that we be granted a restraining order. We also reported the unauthorized medical treatment to the appropriate licensing boards. The psychologist faced an ethics investigation for failing to verify guardianship before treating minors. The final court hearing took place 6 weeks after Patricia first filed her petition. Naomi submitted a comprehensive report recommending that Patricia's request be denied entirely and that supervised visitation only be considered after Patricia completed a course of therapy addressing boundary issues and her understanding of parental rights. The report detailed Patricia's pattern of escalating control, her unauthorized entries into our home documented by smart home logs, her secret therapy sessions with the twins, evidence of coaching the children, and the concerning life insurance policy change. Our lawyer also submitted text messages that Ethan had managed to obtain from Patricia's phone during a visit to her house. In these messages, exchanged with Patricia's sister Clara, Patricia discussed how she was building a case against me, how she hoped I would make a mistake she could use, and how she believed the girls would be better off living with her where they would receive proper care and attention. One message said, "If I can just document enough evidence that she is negligent, I can get emergency custody and then Ethan will see I was right all along." When Patricia's lawyer tried to present the therapy notes as evidence of my inadequate parenting, our lawyer was ready with the psychologist's corrected statement and Naomi's report about the coaching. When Patricia tried to claim she had the right to use her key to check on her grandchildren, our lawyer presented the trespassing logs and the fact that she had been entering our home an average of 3 times per week without permission for months. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who clearly did not appreciate having her courtroom used for what she called a vindictive and manipulative attempt to undermine parental rights. She denied Patricia's petition for visitation in its entirety, granted us a 5-year restraining order that included Violet and Luna, ordered Patricia to pay our legal fees which totaled $31,000, and referred the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to the false police report and criminal trespassing. Patricia tried to argue, started saying something about how she was only trying to protect her grandbabies, but the judge cut her off. The judge said that filing a false police report that resulted in an Amber Alert and a traumatic roadside stop was not the behavior of a concerned grandmother. It was the behavior of someone attempting to harm a parent's reputation and relationship with their children. The judge also noted that the unauthorized medical treatment and evidence of coaching minor children to make false statements about a parent could constitute fraud and attempted parental alienation, both serious matters. 2 months later, Patricia was formally charged with filing a false police report and 3 counts of criminal trespassing. She pleaded no contest to all charges as part of a deal that allowed her to avoid jail time but resulted in a permanent criminal record, 2 years of probation, and mandatory counseling. She was also ordered to reimburse the county for the costs associated with the Amber Alert and police response to her false report, which came to nearly $8,000. The fallout in Patricia's personal life was significant. The court case was public record and several local news outlets picked up the story because of the unusual circumstances and the abuse of the Amber Alert system. Her former colleagues from the school district where she had been principal for so many years quietly distanced themselves. Her church community, where she had positioned herself as a devoted grandmother being cruelly kept from her grandbabies, learned the truth about what she had actually done. She went from being seen as a victim to being recognized as someone who had filed a false kidnapping report and stalked her own family. Ethan struggled deeply with accepting what his mother had done. He started going to therapy to process the realization that the loving mother he remembered from his childhood was also someone capable of terrorizing his wife and attempting to manipulate the legal system to gain control over his daughters. His therapist helped him understand that Patricia's escalating behavior likely stemmed from her retirement and loss of authority, combined with some deeper control issues that had probably always been present but were now unchecked. He tried to maintain some relationship with his mother for several months after the restraining order was issued, meeting her for coffee occasionally, talking on the phone. But Patricia refused to accept any responsibility for what happened. She maintained that she was the victim, that I had turned her son and granddaughters against her, that the judge was biased, that none of this would have happened if I had just been a better mother and kept her informed of our whereabouts. After one particularly frustrating conversation where Patricia again insisted she had done nothing wrong, Ethan stopped reaching out to her. He told me that he finally understood something his therapist had been trying to help him see, that his mother's love had always been conditional on control, and that any relationship with her would require him to prioritize her feelings over his wife and children's safety. He chose us, fully and finally, in a way he maybe should have done years earlier but was doing now. The twins are in counseling now, working with a properly licensed child therapist that we carefully vetted and who has helped them process the scary experience of being separated from me by police, the confusion about why Mama Pat did what she did, and the complex feelings of missing someone who hurt their family. Violet asked sometimes if Mama Pat still loves them. Luna wonders if they did something wrong to make her go away. The therapist assures us this is normal and that with time and consistent support, they will understand that none of this was their fault. My professional reputation recovered, mostly. I said detailed explanations to the clients who had distanced themselves, including documentation that the Amber Alert was canceled and resulted from a false report. One client never responded and I consider their contract permanently lost. The other decided to continue our working relationship after a frank conversation about what happened. I learned the hard way that something like this can have far-reaching consequences beyond just the immediate trauma. Ethan and I are closer now than we have been in years, forged back together by going through something so difficult and coming out the other side as a united team. He apologizes often for not seeing his mother's behavior for what it was sooner, for asking me to be understanding when I should have been protected. I am learning to forgive him, understanding that untangling yourself from a lifetime of conditioning by a manipulative parent is not simple or quick. We have rituals now that we did not have before, family meetings where everyone gets to voice concerns, regular check-ins about how the girls are feeling, firm boundaries about who has access to our home and our children. We changed their preschool to one that requires written authorization from both parents before anyone else can pick them up. We have a code word system with the girls for emergencies. We are more cautious and maybe a little less trusting, but we are safe. Looking back, I can see how the situation built slowly, each boundary violation a little bigger than the last, each excuse for Patricia's behavior making the next excuse easier. I minimized my own discomfort because I wanted to avoid conflict, because I thought being a good daughter-in-law meant accommodating my husband's mother, because I believed family harmony was more important than trusting my instincts. I will not make that mistake again. If I could go back and talk to myself 5 years ago when the twins were born and Patricia was just starting to show signs of unhealthy attachment, I would tell myself to trust my gut. I would tell myself that setting boundaries is not mean or selfish, it is necessary. I would tell myself that someone who truly loves you will respect your role as a parent rather than trying to undermine it. I would tell myself that normal grandmothers do not enter your house 3 times a week when you are not home or call the police to report you for kidnapping your own children. The restraining order lasts until the twins are 10 years old. After that, Patricia can petition to have it lifted, but she would need to show significant change and we would have the opportunity to oppose it. Honestly, I cannot imagine ever feeling comfortable allowing her back into our lives. The trust is not just broken, it is obliterated. She did not just cross a line, she crossed every line and then tried to use the legal system to punish me for not letting her control our family. Sometimes I wonder if she understands the magnitude of what she lost. She could have been a beloved grandmother with regular, healthy involvement in her granddaughters' lives. Instead, she will miss their childhood, their milestones, their growth into whoever they are going to become. She chose control over connection and now she has neither. The girls are thriving now, more than 6 months past the worst of it. They still ask about Mama Pat occasionally but less often as time passes. They talk to Ethan's father, who divorced Patricia years ago and who has been respectful and appropriate in his role as a grandfather. They have my parents who love them fiercely and would never dream of undermining us or inserting themselves inappropriately into our parenting. We took a vacation last month, back to a beach, different location but same ocean vibes. This time there were no police stops, no Amber Alerts, no threatening mother-in-law waiting at home. Just our little family of 4, building sandcastles and collecting shells and making new memories untainted by Patricia's shadow. The girls laughed and played without the tension that had been present in them before, when they were caught between loving their Mama Pat and sensing that something was not right. I still look over my shoulders sometimes, still check the smart home logs more often than necessary, still feel a jolt of anxiety when I see a car that looks like Patricia's. I am working on that in my own therapy, processing the trauma and learning to feel secure again. The therapist says it is normal to have residual hypervigilance after what happened, that it will fade with time as I continue to have experiences that prove I am safe. What happened to me should not happen to anyone, but I know from the support groups I have found online that mother-in-law conflict and grandparent overreach are far more common than I realized. There are thousands of parents dealing with boundary-stopping in-laws, with grandparents who believe they have more rights than they do, with family members who use manipulation and guilt to maintain control. My story is extreme but not unique. If you are reading this and seeing echoes of your own situation, please trust yourself. If someone in your life is consistently disrespecting your boundaries, showing up uninvited, criticizing your parenting, undermining your authority with your children, making you feel like you are crazy or overreacting, you are not imagining it. You are not too sensitive. You are not being ungrateful. You are recognizing unhealthy behavior and you have every right to protect yourself and your children from it. Document everything, change your locks if you need to, get a lawyer if necessary, and most importantly, insist that your partner support you. If your partner cannot or will not set boundaries with their parent to protect your family, that is a marriage problem that needs to be addressed directly. I almost let my marriage crumble because I thought I had to accept Patricia's behavior to keep the peace. I learned that sometimes the only way to save your family is to be willing to walk away from toxic people, even if they share your DNA or your last name. The legal fees were significant, the emotional toll was enormous, and there were moments during the process when I was not sure we would survive it as a couple or a family. But we did survive, and we are better for it. Violet and Luna are growing up knowing that their parents will protect them, that their home is safe, that the adults in their life have their best interests at heart. Ethan is learning to be the husband and father he always wanted to be, freed from the obligation to manage his mother's feelings at the expense of his family's well-being. As for Patricia, I heard through Ethan's father that she still maintains she did nothing wrong, that she was just a concerned grandmother, that we overreacted and poisoned her relationship with her grandchildren. She tells people we are keeping the girls from her out of spite. She has learned nothing and changed nothing, which confirms that the restraining order was absolutely necessary. I do not wish her harm, but I also do not wish her presence in our lives. Some relationships cannot be repaired and should not be attempted. Some people are too toxic, too manipulative, too unwilling to change. Recognizing that and acting accordingly is not cruel, it is self-preservation. Today, more than a year after that terrifying traffic stop, I can honestly say we are happy. The girls are doing well in kindergarten, I have rebuilt my client roster and my professional reputation, Ethan has processed enough of his trauma to be truly present with us, and our home feels peaceful in a way it never did when Patricia had access to it. We still have healing to do, both individually and as a family, but we are doing the healing together and we are moving forward. I will never forget the sight of those red and blue lights in my rearview mirror, but I also will never forget the strength I found in that moment and in every moment since. I protected my daughters, I stood up for myself, I demanded that my husband choose us, and I refused to be intimidated by someone who tried to use the legal system as a weapon against me. That is the person I want my daughters to grow up to be, strong enough to set boundaries, brave enough to defend themselves, and wise enough to walk away from anyone who treats them as less than they deserve. My mother-in-law tried to have me arrested for kidnapping my own children, and in doing so, she lost them forever. That is the price of choosing control over love, manipulation over respect, and pride over accountability. I did not choose this outcome, Patricia did, and she will have to live with the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. As for me, I choose peace, I choose my family, and I choose to never again doubt myself when every instinct tells me something is wrong. That lesson, learned the hardest way possible, is one I will carry forward and teach my daughters as they grow. Trust yourself, protect yourself, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for setting boundaries that keep you and your loved ones safe. The aftermath continues to unfold in small ways even now. Last month, Violet came home from kindergarten and told me that her teacher had asked the class to draw pictures of their families. Violet drew me, Ethan, Luna, and herself, along with my parents and Ethan's father. No Mama Pat. When I gently asked if she wanted to include her, Violet thought for a moment and then said, "I do not think so. Mama Pat made you cry and that was not nice." The clarity of a 5-year-old's moral compass still surprises me sometimes. Luna processes things differently, more quietly, and I have noticed she sometimes includes an extra figure in her family drawings that she does not label or explain. Her therapist says this is normal, that children often need to hold space for complicated feelings about people who are no longer in their lives. We let her draw whoever she needs to draw and we do not press her to explain unless she wants to. Ethan's relationship with his father has actually strengthened through all of this. George Carter divorced Patricia when Ethan was in college, and while Ethan always assumed his mother's version of events was accurate, he now sees that his father probably had very good reasons for leaving. George has been supportive throughout the legal process, even offering to testify about Patricia's controlling behavior during their marriage if it would help our case. He sees the girls regularly, takes them for ice cream, comes to their school events, and respects every boundary we set without question. He is proof that healthy grandparent relationships are possible when the grandparent respects the parent's authority. I ran into one of Patricia's former teaching colleagues at the grocery store about 3 months ago. She recognized me from the news coverage of the court case and approached hesitantly, clearly unsure whether I would want to talk to her. She told me that she had worked with Patricia for 15 years and had always found her to be controlling and rigid but effective in her role as principal. Then she said something that stuck with me. She told me that after Patricia retired, several staff members had privately shared stories about how Patricia would call them at home during evenings and weekends, show up at school events she was no longer responsible for, and struggle to accept that she no longer had authority over the building's operations. The colleague said the school board had actually asked Patricia to stop coming to campus so frequently because her presence was undermining the new principal. Apparently, Patricia had been giving students and staff instructions that contradicted the new administration, insisting that her way was the right way, refusing to accept that she no longer had any decision-making power. Hearing this gave me a fuller picture of Patricia's struggles with control and authority, and helped me understand that her behavior toward our family was part of a larger pattern that had been present throughout her life. Our lawyer, Gabriella Foster, told us that our case has become something she references when consulting with other families dealing with grandparent overreach. She said the combination of the false police report, the unauthorized medical treatment, the documented trespassing, and the coaching of children created such a clear pattern of escalating boundary violations that it serves as a textbook example of when grandparent rights should absolutely not be granted. I am glad something positive came from our experience, that other families might benefit from what we went through. The psychologist who saw Violet and Luna without proper authorization lost her license for 6 months and was required to complete additional ethics training before being allowed to practice again. I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, she was manipulated by Patricia and may have genuinely believed she was helping the girls. On the other hand, she had a professional obligation to verify guardianship and parental consent before treating minors. Her failure to follow basic protocols allowed Patricia to continue her campaign against me for months longer than should have been possible. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had not started documenting Patricia's behavior when I did, if I had not checked those smart home logs, if I had not kept notes about her comments and her boundary violations. Without that documentation, the court case would have been much more difficult. It would have been her word against mine, and she could have painted me as a paranoid, controlling daughter-in-law keeping a loving grandmother from her grandchildren. The lesson there is clear. If someone in your life is behaving in ways that concern you, document it, dates, times, specific quotes, witnesses if possible. You hope you will never need that documentation, but if you do need it, you will be grateful it exists. Ethan's therapy has helped him recognize patterns from his childhood that he had previously dismissed or rationalized. He remembers now how his mother would go through his belongings when he was a teenager, reading his journals and monitoring his phone calls, all under the guise of being a concerned parent. He remembers how she tried to control his choice of college, his choice of major, even his choice of friends, always insisting she knew what was best for him. He remembers the guilt trips when he moved out of state for his first job, the accusations that he was abandoning her, the dramatic phone calls about how lonely and hurt she was. When he met me and we started dating, Patricia initially seemed welcoming, but Ethan now recognizes that she was gathering information and positioning herself to maintain influence. She asked intrusive questions about my family, my career plans, my thoughts on children and parenting. At the time, it seemed like normal getting-to-know-you conversation, but in hindsight it was Patricia assessing whether I would be someone she could control or someone who would challenge her authority in her son's life. Our wedding was full of small power struggles that I did not fully recognize at the time. Patricia insisted on being involved in every decision, had opinions about everything from the venue to the flowers to the guest list, and created drama when we did not follow her suggestions. She gave a toast at the reception that was ostensibly sweet but included several comments about how she hoped I would take good care of her son and listen to her advice since she knew him best. Ethan's father actually apologized to me at the reception for Patricia's behavior, which should have been a clearer warning sign than I recognized it to be. Looking back through this lens, I can see the entire trajectory of Patricia's escalating control, and I can see how I normalized each step because it came gradually and because Ethan minimized it. That is how these situations often work. The boundary violations start small and increase incrementally so that you are constantly adjusting your sense of what is acceptable. By the time you realize how far things have gone, you are in deep and the person has established patterns that are difficult to break. I have connected with other women through online support groups who have similar stories about controlling mothers-in-law or overbearing family members. The details vary, but the core dynamics are remarkably consistent. Someone who believes they have authority they do not actually have, someone who uses guilt and manipulation to maintain control, someone who escalates when their control is challenged, and often someone who will weaponize systems like police or courts or social services to punish the person who set boundaries against them. One woman in my support group had her mother-in-law call Child Protective Services with false reports of neglect multiple times until CPS finally flagged the reports as malicious. Another had her mother-in-law show up at her children's school claiming to be picking them up for a doctor's appointment, forcing the school to implement strict protocols about who was authorized to collect the children. Another discovered her mother-in-law had opened credit cards in her grandchildren's names and run up thousands of dollars in debt. The stories are endless and heartbreaking. What strikes me most is how many of these women spent years trying to be understanding, trying to keep the peace, trying to maintain family harmony, all while being systematically undermined and disrespected. We are socialized to be accommodating, especially to older family members, especially to our husbands' mothers. We are taught that setting boundaries with family is mean or selfish or disrespectful. We are told we are too sensitive or reading too much into things or causing unnecessary drama when we push back against inappropriate behavior. I wish I had trusted myself sooner. I wish I had demanded Ethan get the house key back the first time I asked instead of letting him make excuses for months. I wish I had put my foot down about the daily video calls and the mama pet nickname and the unannounced visits. I wish I had taken Patricia's comments about grandparents' rights as the serious threat they were instead of dismissing them as dramatic posturing. I wish I had protected my family more fiercely from the beginning instead of waiting until things reached a crisis point. But I also know that self-blame is not productive, and my therapist reminds me regularly that I did the best I could with the information and tools I had at the time. I was operating in a family system that had normalized Patricia's controlling behavior for decades. I was married to a man who had been conditioned since childhood to prioritize his mother's feelings, and I was trying to navigate complex family dynamics without a roadmap. I eventually found my strength and drew my lines, and that is what matters. The girls ask sometimes when they will see Mama Pat again. We have been honest with them in age-appropriate ways, explaining that Mama Pat made some choices that were not safe for our family and that she will not be visiting us for a long time. We tell them it is okay to have mixed feelings about this, that you can love someone and still need to stay away from them if they are not treating you well. We emphasize that none of this is their fault and that they did nothing wrong. The therapist assures us we are handling it correctly. Violet told me last week that she remembers the police stopping us on our vacation. She said it was really scary and she did not understand why it was happening. Then she asked if that was because of what Mama Pat did. When I confirmed it was, she was quiet for a moment before saying, "That was not nice, you are a good mommy and you are not kidnapping us." Hearing my 5-year-old daughter use the word kidnapping in relation to her own grandmother is surreal and heartbreaking, but I am glad she can talk about it and process it rather than keeping it buried. Luna has started having occasional nightmares, waking up crying about being taken away or separated from us. This is part of the trauma response from that roadside stop, her therapist says, and it will improve with time and continued reassurance. We have a whole routine now for when she wakes up scared, turning on the nightlight, checking that all the doors are locked together, reviewing our family safety plan, reminding her that we are all here and safe and no one is going to take anyone away. Ethan read somewhere that children often blame themselves when adults in their lives have conflict, so he has been very intentional about explaining to the girls that the situation with Mama Pat has nothing to do with them and everything to do with choices Mama Pat made. He tells them regularly that they are wonderful, that we love being their parents, that our family is strong and safe. I can see the difference these conversations make, the way the girls relax a little more each time they are reassured. My parents have been incredible throughout all of this, supportive without being intrusive, offering help without taking over, respecting our decisions while making sure we knew they were there if we needed anything. My mom told me that she had always felt uncomfortable around Patricia but tried to be polite for the sake of family harmony. She said she noticed how Patricia would make little digs at my parenting or at my working from home, and she wanted to say something but did not want to cause problems. I told her I understood, that I had made the same calculation for years, but that we both should have spoken up sooner. The financial impact of the legal battle was significant, even with Patricia being ordered to pay our legal fees. We paid those fees up front over several months, draining our savings and putting some charges on credit cards. Patricia was supposed to pay us back within 90 days of the court order, but she requested an extended payment plan claiming financial hardship. She is paying us back at $500 per month, which means it will take more than 5 years for us to be fully reimbursed. Our lawyer said we could push for faster payment, but we decided it was not worth the stress of additional court appearances. The money was worth it for the restraining order and for the court documentation of everything Patricia did. Having a judge officially validate that her behavior was inappropriate, harmful, and potentially criminal has been healing in a way I did not expect. It is not just my word anymore that she crossed lines, it is a legal finding, documented, and official. When I doubt myself or wonder if I overreacted, I can look at that court order and remember that a neutral third party reviewed all the evidence and decided we needed protection from her. Work has stabilized for me now. I was honest with all my current and potential clients about what happened, providing documentation and context, and most people were understanding. I did lose that one client permanently, and there were a few prospective projects that never materialized, probably because people were nervous about the drama. But I also gained some new clients who specifically sought me out because they had read about the case and respected how I handled myself. One woman told me she hired me because she had her own difficult mother-in-law situation and felt like I would understand her need for flexibility and boundaries. I have thought about writing more publicly about this experience, maybe a blog post or an article for one of those parenting websites. But I worry about inviting more attention or giving Patricia any reason to claim I am harassing her or damaging her reputation. Our lawyer advised that as long as the restraining order is active, it is probably better to keep a lower profile and not poke the bear. After the restraining order expires, if Patricia does not petition to have contact with us restored, I might write something more detailed about the experience with the hope that it helps other families recognize and address similar situations earlier than we did. For now, I am focused on our healing and our life moving forward. The girls start a new activity next month, gymnastics classes they have been begging to try, and I am excited to watch them discover something new in an environment where they can just be kids without any of the complicated family dynamics we have been navigating. Ethan and I have started having a weekly date night again, something we let slip during the years when Patricia was constantly inserting herself into our schedule and our plans. We are remembering who we are as a couple, not just as parents or as defenders of our family against external threats. I still have moments of anger at Patricia for what she did, for the fear she caused my daughters, for the trauma of being treated like a criminal by police who separated me from my crying children, for the damage to my professional reputation, for the money and time and emotional energy we had to spend fighting her in court. I have moments of anger at Ethan too, for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting us more effectively, for all the times he asked me to be understanding when I should have been defended. My therapist says this anger is healthy and normal, and that I should let myself feel it rather than pushing it down in the name of moving forward. But I also have moments of profound gratitude. Gratitude that my children are safe, that we have legal protection in place, that the truth came out in a way that left no room for doubt about who was at fault, that Ethan finally opened his eyes and chose us fully, that we are building a healthier family dynamic, and that we now know how to spot these patterns if they ever emerge again from any direction. We survived something that could have destroyed us, and we came through it stronger and more united. The restraining order is not just a piece of paper, it is peace of mind. It means Patricia cannot legally come near us, cannot contact us directly or through third parties, cannot show up at the girls' school or our home or anywhere else we might be. If she violates the order, she faces immediate arrest and additional criminal charges. She has not violated it so far, and I hope it stays that way, but knowing we have that protection makes an enormous difference in how safe I feel day to day. George told Ethan that Patricia is telling people she has been forbidden from seeing her grandchildren because of a vindictive daughter-in-law and a biased judge. She is still not taking any accountability, still positioning herself as a victim, still unable to see or admit what she did wrong. This does not surprise me, but it does confirm that reconciliation is impossible. You cannot repair a relationship with someone who refuses to acknowledge they caused harm. Patricia would need to fundamentally change her understanding of boundaries, control, and respect for parental authority, and at 63 years old with a lifetime of these patterns behind her, that kind of change seems unlikely. Ethan asked me a few months ago if I thought there would ever be a time when we might allow supervised visits with Patricia, maybe when the girls were older and better able to speak up for themselves if anything felt wrong. I told him honestly that I could not imagine ever feeling safe allowing Patricia access to our children in any capacity. The therapy coaching, the unauthorized medical appointments, the false police report, the life insurance policy increase, all of it paints a picture of someone who sees my daughters as possessions she has a right to control rather than as people with their own parents who make decisions for them. That mindset is incompatible with any healthy relationship. He did not argue with me, just nodded sadly and said he understood. I think part of him still grieves the mother he thought he had, the mother he wanted her to be, separate from the reality of who she actually is. His therapist tells him that grief is appropriate and normal, that he is mourning the loss of the relationship he wished he had even while accepting that it was never really what he thought it was. It is complicated and painful and there is no easy resolution. The twins will be 6 years old in a few months. We are planning a birthday party at a local trampoline park, inviting their friends from school and a few family members. We do not have to worry about Patricia showing up uninvited or causing a scene. We do not have to manage her expectations or field her criticism or deal with her trying to take over the party planning. We can just celebrate our daughters and let them have fun without any of the tension that used to permeate every family gathering. That freedom is worth everything we went through to get here. I have a small ritual now every time I leave the house with the girls. I check that I have my license, their birth certificates stored digitally on my phone, and Ethan's contact information readily accessible. I have a folder on my phone with documentation of the restraining order, court orders establishing custody, and our lawyer's contact information. I hope I never need any of it again, but having it makes me feel prepared rather than vulnerable. I will never again be caught off guard the way I was that day 200 miles from home when police pulled me over. Sometimes I imagine what I would say to Patricia if I could have one honest conversation with her. I would tell her that she did not have to lose her grandchildren, that there was a path where she could have been part of their lives in a healthy way, that all she needed to do was respect boundaries and honor that Ethan and I are the parents. I would tell her that her need for control destroyed any possibility of a relationship with Violet and Luna, and that the loss is entirely her own fault. I would tell her that calling the police and falsely reporting me for kidnapping my own children was not the act of a loving grandmother, it was the act of someone willing to traumatize children to punish their mother. But I will never have that conversation because the restraining order prohibits all contact. And even if it did not, Patricia has shown no capacity for self-reflection or accountability. She would twist my words, play the victim, find a way to make it my fault. Some people cannot be reached and should not be engaged with, and Patricia is one of them. Instead, I focus my energy on my daughters and their healing, on my marriage and our continued growth together, on my work and my own mental health. I'm building the life we want without the shadow of Patricia's dysfunction hanging over us. We have family game nights and dance parties in the kitchen and movie marathons on rainy weekends. We have routines and rituals and inside jokes. We have peace. The girls are thriving in kindergarten, making friends and learning and growing into their own personalities. Violet is bold and outgoing, always the first to volunteer to answer questions or try something new. Luna is quieter and more thoughtful, an observer who takes things in before jumping into action. They are both smart and funny and kind, and I am so proud of who they are becoming. Patricia is missing all of this, and that is her loss entirely. Ethan and I talk sometimes about whether we want to have more children. Before all of this happened, we thought we might try for a third baby in a few years. Now we are less certain, both because of the trauma we have been processing and because we are wary of giving Patricia any additional leverage or reason to insert herself back into our lives. We have time to decide, and we are taking it slowly, focusing first on stabilizing our family of 4 before considering expanding it. Whatever we decide, we will make that decision together without input from Patricia or anyone else who does not respect our authority as parents. That is something I am clear on now in a way I was not before. Major decisions about our family are ours alone to make, and people who cannot accept that do not get a voice in the conversation. I have learned to trust my instincts in a deeper way now. When something feels off, I pay attention to that feeling instead of dismissing it or rationalizing it away. When someone crosses a boundary, I address it immediately rather than letting it slide. When Ethan starts slipping into old patterns of minimizing or making excuses, I call it out directly rather than swallowing my discomfort to keep the peace. Our relationship is stronger because we are both more honest and more willing to have difficult conversations in the moment rather than letting resentment build. The phrase I come back to often is this: the peace that comes from removing toxic people from your life is worth the discomfort of the process to get there. Fighting Patricia in court was hard, enduring that traffic stop was traumatic, spending tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees was financially painful, but the peace we have now, the safety and the calm and the freedom from constant boundary violations, is worth all of it. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if Patricia will eventually accept reality and leave us alone permanently, or if she will continue to see herself as a victim and plot ways to regain access to her granddaughters. I do not know if the restraining order expiring in 5 years will bring new challenges, or if by then enough time will have passed that she will have moved on. I do not know how Violet and Luna will feel about all of this when they are older and able to understand the full complexity of what happened. What I do know is that I protected my children, I stood up for myself and my family, I refused to be intimidated by someone who tried to use the legal system as a weapon against me, and I survived one of the most difficult periods of my life with my family intact. I know that Ethan chose us and continues to choose us every day. I know that my daughters are safe and loved and growing up in a home where boundaries are respected and their well-being is the priority. I know that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us are the ones who hurt us most, and that walking away from toxic family members is not cold or cruel, it is an act of self-preservation and protection. I know that being a good mother sometimes means making decisions that other people will not understand or agree with, and doing it anyway because you know what your children need. My mother-in-law tried to have me arrested for kidnapping my own children, and in the process, she revealed herself to be someone far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. But she also inadvertently gave me something valuable, absolute clarity about who deserves to be in our lives and who does not, the strength to set and maintain boundaries no matter how difficult, and the certainty that I will never again doubt myself when every instinct tells me something is wrong. We are building a good life, my little family of 4, free from the dysfunction that plagued us for so long. We are healing together, growing together, and moving forward together. And that, ultimately, is the only victory that matters.